Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the hole Labour is in is deepest in Scotland, where the once mighty party now holds just one Westminster seat. If Jeremy Corbyn is to win the general election in 2020, he needs to claw back support from the SNP. And the first test of his appeal north of the border is coming up fast in elections to the Scottish Parliament in May. Speaking to Andrew Marr this morning, the leader of the SNP took aim at Mr Corbyn, criticising a plan he floated to keep Britain's Trident submarines, but minus the nuclear warheads.
I wonder what you made of Jeremy Corbyn's suggestion you could keep the Trident submarines and therefore keep the jobs in Scotland but not have nuclear missiles on them.
I think it was ridiculous, and I think it's a sign of just how tortured these debates are becoming within the Labour Party. Now, on Trident, I agree with Jeremy Corbyn. I'm not in favour of the renewal of Trident. And we might have a vote on that in the House of Commons sooner rather than later. And I think the real challenge to Jeremy Corbyn is, can he get his party into the position he wants them to be in, so that we can have any chance at all of stopping the renewal of Trident. For Labour to sit on the fence on this issue or have a free vote on this issue will leave them without a shred of credibility.
The First Minister. I'm joined now by the Shadow Scottish Secretary Ian Murray. Welcome to the Sunday Politics. Let's pick up on the point there from Nicola Sturgeon with Trident. I mean, in Scotland, the electoral choice in this is now clear. If you're a unilateral disarmer on nuclear, you vote SNP. If you support the deterrent, you vote Tory. You couldn't vote Labour on this issue because people don't know what you stand for.
Well, the Scottish Labour Party has been pretty clear at our conference back at the end of October. The motion was passed almost unanimously to reject the renewal of Trident on that policy basis.
But it's not party policy.
At UK level is still our policy it was at the general election, and there's a policy review happening at the moment. So the Scottish Labour Party's policy is pretty clear on this. This is a Scottish election, don't forget, and I would rather we were talking about the issues to deal with public services in Scotland, which I think is incredibly important, and these kind of Trident issues are diverting us away from those really big issues of policy in terms of our public services.
The Mattison research that we've been referring to in this programme found that Scottish voters felt abandoned by the Labour Party, a process that they thought started many years before the independence referendum. When did Labour start taking Scottish voters for granted?
Well, I think it's been pretty clear of a number of reports that have been done over the last 5 or 6 years that there has been a process in the party where we haven't devolved the party as much as we've devolved Scotland. The Scottish Parliament coming in 1999 was a tremendous opportunity for Scotland, a tremendous opportunity for the Scottish Labour Party. It's been proven to be so, but I just don't think we've caught up with that. That was in Jim Murphy and Sarah Boyack's report in 2011, and I think now under Kezia Dugdale's leadership, she's refreshing the party, she's refreshing party policy, she's refreshing that relationship with the Scottish voters, and hopefully that will come through to fruition come the elections in May.
Well, you say that, but you'll know from the briefing, if you were at the Shadow Cabinet meeting, and I'm sure you were, last week by Labour's election director, that you face further electoral disasters in Holyrood in May.
Look, nobody's under any illusions this is going to be a difficult election, Andrew. The polls are showing that at the moment. But what Kezia is trying to do is get a very positive policy platform together, reconnect with the Scottish people, respond to what Scottish people have been telling us on the doorsteps during the general election last year, but in our campaigning and our work since. And she's doing that on the basis of responding to what the Scottish people want. That's what people want to have in a Scottish general election.
But what the Shadow Cabinet was told,
to deliver.
What the Shadow Cabinet was told by your own election director is that he expects you to lose all your constituency MSPs, just as you lost all your constituency MPs bar you last May. What can you do to avoid that?
The important thing here is to go back to what I've just said about Kezia Dugdale's positive policy platform. She's refreshing the party, she's bringing in new faces, she wants to make sure she can use the current powers of the Scottish Parliament and the substantial new powers that are coming in the Scotland Bill to change the policies of the Scottish Labour Party in order for us to have a policy platform in Scotland that's incredibly positive, that transforms the lives in Scotland. That's what we should be talking about.
What's the most distinctive Scottish policy initiative since Mr Corbyn became leader?
Well, this isn't about Mr Corbyn, this is about Kezia Dugdale. She's
All
the
right,
leader
so
of
what's the
Scotland.
most
This is about
distinctive
Scottish
Scottish
elections.
policy initiative
We've
since
got
she
a Help
became-
to Buy scheme for first-time buyers, which would give people £3,000 to help them on the property ladder. We want to build 60,000 affordable homes. We want to put the 50p tax rate back in to close the educational attainment gap. Those are just three of a number of policies that Kezia has announced already. She's the only one in this election campaign so far actually talking about the issues of public policy in Scotland and putting policy proposals forward. Nobody else is talking about these kinds of issues, and that's important.
That collection of the policies that you've outlined are enough to stave off a further electoral humiliation?
Well, it's just the start of a policy platform that Kezia will be announcing over the next few months in the run-up to the elections. That's just three of a number of policies.
Is a Tory policy in
This is about resolving the housing crisis in Scotland that's been created by an SNP government that's been in for 8 years. We're not holding them to account on the record because people are obsessing about things like polls. Let's get on to the big issues of public policy. The NHS is in trouble in Scotland, educational attainment gaps getting larger, the transport system's creaking at the seams. All of those have to be dealt with, and there's a real opportunity in this election to talk about the powers that the Scottish Parliament currently has and the substantial new powers it's got to transform the lives of Scots. Let's talk about tomorrow's Scotland rather than yesterday's polls.
How much would a top rate 50p tax for Scotland only, how much would that raise?
Well, it would raise somewhere between 60 and 110 million, depending on where you would have any sort of behavioural change. But every single penny of that would go into educational attainment. Well, when the Conservatives cut the 50p tax rate to 45 back in the 2012 budget, a tax cut for the very wealthiest in this country, the Treasury were projecting it would cost £3 billion a year to satisfy that.
That was for the whole of the UK.
That was for the whole of the UK. So 60 to 110 million in terms of a Scottish context is a lot of money that we can use to cut the educational attainment gap, which has grown much, much wider in Scotland than the rest of the United Kingdom.
Why is Mr Corbyn not cutting much ice north of the border?
Well, Jeremy's won a significant mandate within the party. He needs to now win that significant mandate in the country. But what we're concentrating on at this election is Kezia Dugdale is a new, fresh leader. She's well liked in the public. She's coming forward with very positive policies.
You stress all the time Kezia Dugdale, and I understand that because she's the leader of the party in Scotland. I understand that. But is Mr Corbyn an asset or a liability come these elections in May?
Well, he's an asset because he's talking about what the Scots and the Scottish people wanted us to talk about, an anti-austerity platform. He wants us to invest in public services. He wants us to use the powers in the Scotland Bill to transform the Scottish Parliament so we can transform the lives of ordinary Scots.
So
that's what he's talking about, and that's why we need to get breakthrough by talking about policies rather than personalities.
If you've got Ms Dugdale and Mr Corbyn doing all the right things by your move, why are the polls so dire for you in Scotland still?
Well, look, we're going to fight for every single vote, every single seat. We're going to try and get as many votes as we possibly can. We fight to win every single election. But whilst we're talking about polls and not holding the Scottish Government to account for what is a pretty dreadful record in government for 8 years and not talking about policies and positive policies that Kezia Dugdale's putting forward, we'll not get any traction in the polls. Let's get this election campaign onto the real issues that ordinary Scots want to talk about on the doorsteps, and that's not personalities and polls. That's about holding a government to account that's been in power for 9 years with a pretty dreadful track record, and get some policies on there that says to the Scottish people, the Scottish Labour Party's change, the Scottish Parliament's powerful, and we can talk about tomorrow's Scotland and how we can transform people's lives.
Ian Murray, thank you for being with us.
No problem at all.
I've been getting away with it all my